let's see about chapter 1, which is Indian Regulatory Framework. So in this chapter we will get to see the meaning of law and its sources, types of law, enforcement of law, and also regarding major regulatory bodies. First thing being, this chapter is a very simple chapter which just gives us the overview about all these topics, about the basic law. So the first thing is, why do we need to know about law? Why awareness of law is essential for a CA? So for a chartered accountant, it's very important because we can advise the client on many legal matters, and also we can advise our management and clients. So let's take for example, you set up a practice firm. Now what do? You need to know about the law, tax and other matters so that you can advise the clients at basic or threshold level. And also, so knowing about law and having awareness about the same will provide us with a set of uniform rules and regulations. So how has this law been evolved? Right from the ancient time. So initially there was this code of Hammurabi, which was basically the oldest law in written form. When King Hammurabi ruled Babylon from period 1792 BC to 1758 BC, it was the oldest law initially. And after that, in 450 BC, again a set of laws were engraved on 12 bronze tablets in Rome, and that was the most detailed code. It was the first written detailed code of any civilization, and that was called 12 tables, since it was engraved on 12 bronze tablets. So what is law? Generally, what is meant by law? So as we know, law is generally a set of obligations. It's a set of rules and regulations and duties which is imposed by the government for securing welfare and providing justice to the society. So sources of law. So till now we have seen about the evolution of law and what is meant by law. Now again, this chapter is a very easy chapter. Only few basic things that we learn, or generally it gives you an overview, after which then this just gives us an overview about the legal system in our country. So sources of law. So sources of law. Law is generally from our constitution. So that's one important source. From the statutes or laws, from parliament and state assemblies, from presidents of judicial decisions of various courts. So we know that courts usually give decisions based on the previous decisions. So that's called as precedents or judicial decisions of various courts. For example, if Supreme Court gives a decision and then other courts follow the same. And then after that, Government of India Act was passed by the Parliament of United Kingdom, wherein it defined the characteristics of government from unitary to federal. So unitary to federal meaning central will have all the powers and duties and responsibilities basically. Federal means where center and state both will have their responsibilities. And after that, the powers of appellate jurisdiction generally extended to civil and criminal cases, wherein they used to handle both these cases, whereas advisory jurisdiction was extended within the powers of federal court to advise the Governor General in public opinion matters. And after that, so first there was this Government of India Act 1935, and after that came the Constitution of India 1950, which is basically the democratic system that's prevailing currently. So Indian Constitution has 3 lists: central list, state list and joint list. So central list is one where center has the power to formulate the regulations and all of that. State list is one wherein state has got the power with regard to certain matters. Whereas joint list, now what do you mean by joint list? Joint list is one wherein both center and state have their responsibilities. The process of making law. So what about the process of making law? So process of making law is that first initially a bill will have to be proposed in the parliament, and after that it is passed in Lok Sabha. After that it's passed in Rajya Sabha, and then finally it gets assent of President of India, basically consent of President of India. Then will be notified in the official Gazette of India. After that it becomes an act of parliament. So let me take that. So process of making law is that first it is passed in the bill as a parliament. It's passed in the parliament as a bill, and then it's passed by Lok Sabha. After that it is passed by Rajya Sabha, Then it gets the assent of president. Assent or basically the consent that is given by president. After that, it has to be notified in the official Gazette of India. And finally, it is passed as an act. So that's about it. Again, this is very simple. Next thing is about types of laws in the Indian legal system. So what are the types of laws that we have? One is criminal law, the one is civil law, the one is common law, and then principles of natural justice. Now let's go one by one. First, what is criminal law? As the name suggests, it's for the crime. It's for violation of rule of law or public wrong and punishment for the same. So generally, criminal law is focused on punishment, whereas civil law is generally kind of dispute between the individual or organization, like in case of breach of contract. So criminal laws for the crime and punishment for the same, which is governed by Code of Criminal Procedure 1973, and whereas civil laws governed by Code of Civil Procedure 1908. So what are the examples of crimes which are covered by criminal law? Murder, rape, theft, fraud, cheating and assault. Whereas under civil law is generally about disputes between organizations or individuals. So what are the laws that are covered over here? Maybe law of contract, family law, property law and law of tort. What do you mean by tort? Tort is generally a civil wrong. So law of contract, like for example, if you enter into a contract with a person so that you can buy the goods, and later on after you make the payment they are not delivering you the goods, now there's breach of contract that's happening over here, for which you can go under which law? I think you've guessed it right, it's civil law. Whereas a particular crime has happened, cheating or murder, in that case that gets covered under criminal law. Now, civil offences would include breach of contract or non-delivery of goods, which is again a breach of contract, or non-payment of dues to lender or seller, defamation, breach of contract, disputes between landlord and tenant. So generally, if there's any dispute between individual organization, that gets covered under civil law. What do you mean by common law? So common law is generally a judgment which is delivered by Supreme Court that will be binding upon courts within territory of India. Now, what do you mean by that? Supreme Court being the supreme authority, whatever decision that they give, now other courts which include high courts and district courts, they would be following the same. It is generally applicable to other courts within India, whatever that the Supreme Court is delivering as judgment. Now, this is based on doctrine of stare decisis. What do you mean by this? It's a principle supporting common law, which means to stand by that which is decided. So if at all Supreme Court passes a judgment, then other courts would also follow the same principle or judgment. Principles of natural justice. Now, principles of natural justice meaning in law, there are generally some principles that are to be followed. When they're delivering a judgment or when they're taking up a case, they will have to follow certain principles of natural justice. For example, one such principle of natural justice is ROBH, which is nothing but reasonable opportunity of being heard. So let's look into some of the principles of natural justice. First one being nemo judex in casuo sua. It means no one should be made a judge in his own cause, and it's a rule against prejudice. Now generally a person cannot decide his own case. That's one principle of natural justice. Other one is audi alteram partem. Now audi alteram partem meaning to hear. So auditory senses is nothing but to hear. So audi alteram partem means to hear the other party or to give the other party a fair hearing. This is nothing but ROBH, reasonable opportunity of being heard. Now let's take for example a plaintiff files a case against B. So A is a plaintiff who files a case, whereas B is a defendant in this case, person who defends his case or the accused. So in that case, just because A files a case against B, judgment will not be delivered in favor of A. So in that case, B also has to be given a reasonable opportunity of being heard. That is, he has to be given an opportunity wherein he can tell what is the perspective of what is his stand, or maybe whatever that has happened. He should also be given an opportunity of being heard. That is one principle of natural justice that's generally followed in law. Next is about enforcing law. Now who will enforce the law? So enforcing the law, generally central or state government will be the enforcing authority. So how will they enforce the law? Through ministry. Ministry will be composed of employed officials. Now they are called as civil servants. And most major ministries will be headed by the cabinet minister, who will sit in the Union Council of Minister, and then it's supported by team junior minister, who's called as ministers of state. So generally we have ministry, like let's take for example Ministry of Education, Now which will again have certain civil servants over there. And then this ministry will also have Union Council of Ministers, and then this will also be supported by a team of junior ministers, who are basically junior ministers, meaning they're all ministers of state. Now, for example, we have Ministry of Education, or maybe other ministries as well, at the state level as well as at the central level. So at the central level, we'll have Union Council of Ministers. So at the state level, we'll have team of junior ministers. For example, if we take Income Tax Act, now that is implemented and enforced by Ministry of Finance. Who is responsible for this? Ministry of Finance. How will they implement or enforce this? Through Central Board of Direct Taxes, CBDT. And that comes under Department of Revenue, which will have civil servants, which is IRS basically. They are IRS. And then it will be enforced. It will be enforced with the help of Union Council of Ministers, and below them we have the team of junior ministers, that is ministers of state. And then we have about this Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance. So Ministry of Finance is the Treasury of India. They concern themselves with taxation, financial legislation, financial institutions, capital markets, center and state finances, and union budget. So Constitutional Ministry of Finance. So Ministry of Finance generally consists of 4 central civil services: Indian Revenue Service, IRS, Indian Accounts and Audit Service, IAAS, Indian Economic Service, IES, and Indian Civil Account Service, ICS. So it consists of these following 4 civil services. So we have the following departments in the Ministry of Finance. We have totally 6 departments. One is Department of Economic Affairs, Department of Expenditure of Revenue, Financial Services, Investment and Public Asset Management, and Public Enterprises. So Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Ministry of Corporate Affairs is an Indian government ministry. They are responsible for regulation of Indian enterprise and industrial and service sector. So generally, Ministry of Corporate Affairs is that administration authority who takes care of the companies administration. Under Companies Act 2013, Companies Act 1956, LLP, and IBC. Ministry of Home Affairs. Ministry of Home Affairs is also Ministry of Government of India, wherein they are mainly responsible for internal security and domestic policy. It's headed by Union Minister of Home Affairs. As the name suggests, Home Affairs. So they generally take care of the internal security and the domestic policies. So departments, what are all the departments that we have in the Ministry of Home Affairs? One is Border Management, Internal Security, Official Language of Home, Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh Affairs, and States. So under Department of Official Language only, we have totally 3 subdivisions, which include Central Translation Bureau, Central Hindi Training Institute, and Directorate of Census Corporations. Then next we have Ministry of Law and Justice. So Ministry of Law and Justice is again a cabinet ministry. So as the name suggests, they are responsible for all the legal affairs. Through Department of Legal Affairs, they manage the legal affairs. Through Legislative Department, they carry out the legislative activities, and through Department of Justice, they administer justice. So Ministry of Law and Justice has totally 3 departments. It is Department of Legal Affairs, Legislative Department, and Justice. So Legal Affairs Department is responsible for management of legal affairs. Legislative Department is responsible for all the legislative activities, and Department of Justice is responsible for administering the justice. Up next we have SEBI. So SEBI, as we know, is a regulatory body for securities and commodity market in India. They also regulate all the listed companies. So it comes under Ministry of Finance within Government of India. It was established on 12th April 1988 as executive body, and it was given statutory powers on 30th January 1992 through SEBI Act 1992. And RBI. So RBI, what do we know about RBI? RBI is India's central bank and regulatory body. They are responsible for regulating the Indian banking system. It comes under Ministry of Finance. BRBNM. Now that's a specialized division we have for printing and minting Indian currency. Bharatiya Reserve Banknote Mudran. And we have the National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI. It's a specialized division to regulate payment and settlement system. And then we have DICGC. DICGC is Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation. This is a specialized division for providing insurance of deposits and for guaranteeing credit facilities to Indian Bank. Up next, we have Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. So, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India is a regulator for overseeing insolvency proceedings. Now, Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India consists of Insolvency Professional Agency, Insolvency Professionals and Information Utilities. It was established on 1st October 2016 and was given statutory powers through IBC, which was again passed by Lok Sabha on 5th May 2016. So IBBI generally takes care of the insolvency proceedings of individuals, companies and limited liability, partnerships and partnership firms. Through NCLT and DRT. So NCLT is for the companies. And DRT is for the individual's insolvency process. Structure of Indian judicial system. So what about the structure of Indian judicial system? So in the hierarchy of courts, we have Supreme Court at the top, which is followed by High Court and then the District Court. So hierarchy flows like this. First up we have the Supreme Court, and then we have the High Court, and then we have the District Court. So Supreme Court is the apex body of judiciary. It's a supreme authority. It was established on 26 Jan 1950 in the same year of Constitution. Who is the highest authority in Supreme Court? Chief Justice of India. Now totally its constitution comprises of 7 members and 34, including Chief Justice of India. So earlier there were 7 members in Supreme Court. And who is the head of Supreme Court? Who is the highest authority? Chief Justice of India. Totally 7 members. Now it has been increased to 34 members, including Chief Justice of India. So why it has been increased to 34 members? Because of increase in number of cases and workload, it has been increased to 34 members. Next, High Court. So High Court is the highest court of appeal in each state and union territory. In each state and union territory, which is the highest court of appeal, High Court. And High Court, actually for each state there must be a High Court. Over here, for each state and territory there is a High Court. There are totally 25 High Courts because 6 states share a single High Court. Oldest High Court is Calcutta High Court, which was established on 2nd July 1862. District Court. And next comes District Court. District Court deals with civil matters like contractual disputes. Earlier we saw maybe due to breach of contract or non-payment of dues, and for claim for damages. So civil judge can try suits not more than 2 crore rupee. So civil district court will handle civil cases, wherein civil judge will try suits cases not more than 2 crore rupee. And which jurisdiction, when a person, if at all they will have to file a case, under which jurisdiction they will have to file the case, depends on the local limits within which a party is decided or where the property and the dispute is situated. Like let's take for example, there's a property dispute between 2 persons, A and B. A is contending that B is not allowing him to enter his property. So this property dispute. Now this comes under, this property dispute, then that comes under civil law. Now A, for example, resides in Chennai and B resides in Coimbatore. Now in that case, and the property under, take for example property under dispute. Property under dispute, for example, is in Madurai. Now in that case, where do they have to file the case? Depends on local limits in which a parties reside, that is Chennai or Coimbatore, or local limits, or the property under dispute is situated, or maybe in Madurai. So they can either proceed to file case in Chennai or Coimbatore or Madurai, wherever the court is, they can proceed to file the case. Maybe where they reside or where the property under dispute is situated. Metropolitan courts. Metropolitan courts are generally established in metropolitan cities in consultation with High Court. Generally, metropolitan courts are established where the population is at least 10 lakh. So 10 lakh or more, then in that case, metropolitan court is established. Then we have the chief metropolitan magistrate who has the power of chief judicial magistrate, and then we have metropolitan magistrate who has the power of magistrate of first class. So and then we have few test your knowledge questions. On this highlighted PDF I'm attaching in the description. You can refer to the same. You can click on the link in the Telegram channel and then you can find this PDF. Thank you.